I woke up on my 75th birthday to the same silence that filled my small house in Newark, New Jersey every morning. No phone calls, no cards on the doormat, no knock at the door from my daughter Jennifer or my son Michael bringing flowers or even a store-bought cake. Just the November cold seeping through the old windows and the familiar creak of the house settling around me. I'd been awake since 4:30, lying in bed and watching the ceiling, remembering other birthdays. My 50th, when my late husband Robert had thrown me a surprise party. My 60th, when Jennifer and Michael had taken me to dinner at a nice restaurant in Manhattan. Even my 70th had warranted a family gathering, complete with grandchildren singing off-key and a cake decorated with too many candles. But 75? Apparently, 75 wasn't worth remembering. I got up slowly. Arthritis makes everything take longer these days, and made my way to the kitchen. The calendar on the wall showed November 20th circled in red marker. I'd circled it myself weeks ago, a small, hopeful gesture that now felt pathetic. Of course, I knew it was my birthday. The question was whether anyone else did. My phone sat on the kitchen table, silent. I checked it anyway, hoping for a text message, a voicemail, anything. Nothing. Not from Jennifer, not from Michael, not from any of my 5 grandchildren. The only notification was a generic birthday greeting from my bank, probably automated. I made coffee and sat at the table where I'd eaten breakfast with Robert for 47 years before cancer took him 3 years ago. The house felt too big and too empty, like it had every day since his death. But today, on my 75th birthday, the emptiness had sharp edges. At 9 o'clock, I did something I'd been doing every Monday for the past 2 years. I drove to the bank and withdrew $700 in cash. Then I drove to Jennifer's house in the suburbs, a 45-minute trip that always left me exhausted, my old Honda struggling with highways I could barely see over the steering wheel anymore. Jennifer's house was a sprawling 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood far nicer than anywhere I'd ever lived. Her husband, Tom, made good money as an operations manager, and Jennifer worked part-time as a dental hygienist. They were comfortable by most standards, but apparently not comfortable enough to decline the $700 I handed Jennifer every single week. "Oh, good, you're here," Jennifer said when she opened the door, not quite meeting my eyes. She was dressed for work, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, makeup perfect. At 46, she looked younger than I had at her age. Less stress, better skincare, a life that hadn't required raising 2 kids on a factory worker's salary. "Happy birthday to me," I said quietly, handing her the envelope of cash. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. "Oh my God, Mom, is it your birthday? I completely forgot. Things have been so crazy with the kids' schedules and—" "It's fine," I interrupted, because what else could I say? That I'd been awake since before dawn, hoping my only daughter would remember the day she came into the world? That I'd circled the date on my calendar like a child waiting for Christmas? "No, it's not fine. I'm so sorry. Let me take you to lunch today. We can go to that Italian place you like." "You have to work. I can call in." "Mom, really, I feel terrible." But she didn't feel terrible enough to have remembered in the first place, and I knew from experience that her offer of lunch was performative, something she'd suggest knowing I'd decline because I always declined. I was supposed to be the understanding mother, the one who didn't make demands or create guilt. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're busy. I understand." Relief flickered across her face. "Are you sure? Because I really can. I'm sure." "Is the money enough this week?" Jennifer's expression shifted, becoming calculating. "Actually, Mom, we're a little short. Tom's car needs new tires, and they're way more expensive than we budgeted for. Could you maybe do $800 this week? Just this once?" I thought about my Social Security check, about the small pension from the factory where I'd worked for 30 years, about the modest savings account that was slowly draining away, $700 at a time. "I'll see what I can do." "You're the best, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you." I drove to Michael's apartment next. Another $700 in my purse. Michael lived in Hoboken with his girlfriend Stephanie and their 2 kids from Michael's previous marriage. At 43, he was a line cook at a restaurant in the city, making enough to get by, but never quite enough to stop needing help from me. Michael at least had the grace to look guilty when I handed him the money. "Ma, you don't have to keep doing this every week." "I know. Seriously, we'll figure something out. I'm up for a promotion to sous chef. Once that comes through—" "It's fine, Michael. I want to help." He pocketed the cash without further protest. "You want to come in?" Steph made coffee. I almost said yes, desperate for someone to acknowledge my existence on my birthday, even if they didn't remember the significance. But I saw Stephanie in the background, scrolling on her phone, and knew I wasn't really welcome. I was the ATM that delivered cash every Monday, not a person deserving of their time. I should get going, I said. Michael hugged me briefly, and I caught a whiff of cigarette smoke and cooking grease that clung to his clothes, even on his days off. Thanks, Ma. You're a lifesaver. I drove home and sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. Still nothing. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement that today I turned 75, that I'd reached an age I never thought I'd see, that I was still here and still waiting for my children to care. At 3 o'clock, I did something I'd never done before. I baked myself a birthday cake, a simple chocolate cake from a box mix, the kind I used to make for Jennifer and Michael's birthdays when money was tight. I even put candles on it, 75 of them from the bag I'd bought weeks ago, in a moment of optimism. I lit the candles and sang happy birthday to myself in my empty kitchen, my voice cracking on the high notes. Then I blew them out and made a wish that I knew wouldn't come true, that my children would remember I existed for something other than money. The cake sat on the counter, mostly uneaten. I had one slice and wrapped the rest in plastic wrap, knowing it would probably go stale before I finished it. Eating alone had a way of making food taste like ashes. At 8 o'clock, Jennifer called. Mom, I'm so sorry about forgetting your birthday. We're going to do something special this weekend, okay? I promise. Okay, I said, knowing that weekend plans would get canceled, that something would come up, that my birthday would slip further into the past until it was forgotten entirely. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's old recliner and cried for the first time since his funeral. Not just for my forgotten birthday, but for everything. For the fallen $400 a week I gave away while my savings dwindled. For the grandchildren who barely knew me. For the loneliness that had become my constant companion. For the realization that I'd raised children who saw me as an obligation and a resource, but not as a person who deserved love. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. On Tuesday morning, I called Jennifer and told her I wasn't feeling well, that I couldn't make my usual money drop-off. She sounded annoyed rather than concerned. Mom, we really need that money. Can you just drop it in the mailbox if you're not feeling up to coming in? No, I said, the word feeling foreign in my mouth. I'd spent my entire life saying yes to my children, yes to helping with rent, yes to babysitting, yes to cash advances that were never repaid. Saying no felt like speaking a language I'd never learned. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not giving you money this week. Or next week. I need to reassess my finances. Silence on the other end, then. Mom, are you serious? We have bills due. Tom and I are counting on you. Then maybe you should count on yourselves instead. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking. Within an hour, Michael called. Ma, what's going on? Jen said you're cutting us off? I'm not cutting you off. I'm just taking a break. Michael, I give you and your sister $400 every single week. Do you have any idea what that adds up to? That's over $70,000 a year. I'm 75 years old, living on Social Security and a pension, and I'm giving away more than I'm keeping. But you said you wanted to help. I did want to help. I do want to help. But Michael, yesterday was my birthday. My 75th birthday. And not one person in this family remembered. Not you, not Jennifer, not one of your kids. You know what I did? I baked myself a cake and sang happy birthday alone in my kitchen. Ma, I'm sorry. We've just been really busy. Too busy to remember your mother's birthday, but not too busy to take her money every week. He didn't have an answer for that. Over the next few days, both Jennifer and Michael called repeatedly, alternating between apologies and guilt trips. Jennifer sent flowers, expensive ones, which I knew she could only afford because of the money I'd given her last week. Michael showed up at my door with a grocery store cake that said, Happy Birthday, Mom, in blue frosting. Better late than never, right? He said with a weak smile. I looked at the cake, at my son's guilty face, and felt something inside me harden. How much of the money I've given you over the past 2 years have you actually needed, Michael? And how much went to things you just wanted? What? Your cigarettes, Stephanie's nails and hair appointments, the big screen TV I saw in your living room last time I visited. Were those necessities? Ma, that's not fair. What's not fair is that I've been subsidizing your lifestyle while my savings account dwindles to nothing. What's not fair is that you take my money every week and can't even be bothered to remember my birthday. It was an accident. We forgot. You forgot because I don't matter to you. I'm just the bank of Mom, open for withdrawals every Monday, no interest charged, no payback required. Michael left the cake and drove away angry. I threw the cake in the trash and opened a bottle of wine Robert and I had been saving for a special occasion. Apparently, my 75th birthday alone was special enough. The following Monday, I didn't go to the bank. I didn't withdraw $700. I stayed home and did something I'd been putting off for months. I went through my finances with a calculator and a legal pad, adding up exactly how much I'd given my children since Robert died. The number made me sick, $218,400 over 3 years. Nearly $250,000 handed over in weekly installments to 2 adults who were perfectly capable of supporting themselves but had gotten used to their mother's generosity. I justified it to myself as helping them, as being a good mother, as making sure my grandchildren had what they needed. But looking at the numbers now, I saw it for what it really was, enabling. I'd been enabling my children to live beyond their means while sacrificing my own financial security. That afternoon, I called both Jennifer and Michael and told them to come to my house. We needed to have a family meeting. Jennifer arrived first, her expression tight. Michael showed up 20 minutes later, Stephanie in tow, which annoyed me. This was a family matter, and Stephanie wasn't family, not really. But I let it go and gestured for everyone to sit in my living room. I've done some calculations, I said, showing them the legal pad with its damning numbers. In the past 3 years, I've given you $218,400. That's money from my savings, from selling your father's truck and his tools, from cashing in a life insurance policy I was supposed to leave you as inheritance. Jennifer's face went pale. Mom, we didn't know it was that much, didn't you? Didn't you ever stop to think about where an old woman on a fixed income was getting $400 every single week? Or did you just not care as long as the money kept coming? That's not fair, Michael said. You offered to help us. You said you wanted to. I did want to help. But somewhere along the way, help turned into obligation. I couldn't stop giving you money because you'd built your budgets around it. You'd made financial decisions, buying houses, having kids, buying cars, based on the assumption that I'd always be there to subsidize you. So what are you saying? Jennifer asked, her voice cold. You're cutting us off completely? Just like that? I'm saying the weekly payments stop. If you have a genuine emergency, a medical crisis, a job loss, something truly unexpected, I'll consider helping. But I'm not funding your lifestyle anymore. Stephanie spoke up then, her voice dripping with disdain. This is unbelievable. What kind of mother holds money over her children's heads like this? The kind who just realized her children forgot her 75th birthday, but remembered to ask for extra money that same week, I said quietly. It was one birthday, Jennifer protested. You're going to punish us forever because we forgot one birthday? It's not about the birthday. It's about what the birthday represents, that I've become invisible to you, except as a source of money. When was the last time any of you called just to talk? When was the last time you invited me to dinner or asked how I was doing? When was the last time you treated me like a mother instead of an ATM? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. I've made an appointment with a financial advisor, I continued. I'm going to figure out how to stretch what's left of my savings so I can actually enjoy my remaining years instead of working until I die to keep you comfortable. Michael stood up abruptly. You know what? Fine. Keep your money. We don't need it. Then why have you been taking it for 3 years? He didn't answer, just walked out, Stephanie following with a dramatic huff. Jennifer stayed, tears running down her face. Mom, please. We really do need the money. Tom's hours got cut, and the mortgage. Then Tom needs to find another job. Or you need to downsize. Or you need to make the same hard choices I had to make when your father was alive and money was tight. Jennifer, you're a grown woman with a family of your own. You can't expect me to support you forever. But you're our mother. Isn't that what mothers do? Mothers raise their children to be independent. I failed at that, apparently. I made you dependent on me, and that wasn't love. That was fear. Fear of losing you. Fear of being alone. Fear that if I stopped being useful, you'd forget about me entirely. We wouldn't have forgotten about you, Jennifer said, but her voice lacked conviction. You already did. You forgot me on my 75th birthday. If I'd died that day, Would you have even noticed until Monday when the money didn't arrive? Jennifer flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's a horrible thing to say. But is it untrue? She left without answering, and I sat alone in my living room, feeling simultaneously liberated and devastated. I'd drawn a line, set a boundary, protected myself financially, but I'd also potentially destroyed my relationship with my children. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a message from Jennifer or Michael saying they understood, that they were sorry, that they loved me. Nothing came. The next 3 weeks were the loneliest of my life. Jennifer and Michael stopped calling entirely. My grandchildren, who usually sent me occasional texts or videos, went silent. I'd been frozen out, punished for refusing to bankrupt myself for people who didn't even remember my birthday. I kept busy with my financial advisor, a kind woman named Teresa, who looked at my records and shook her head sadly. Mrs. Patterson, if you'd continued at this rate, you would have depleted your savings within 18 months. Then what? You'd have had nothing for emergencies, nothing for end-of-life care. Nothing. I know. Did your children know how precarious your financial situation was? I never told them. I didn't want them to worry. Teresa's expression was compassionate but firm. Financial elder abuse often happens in families where the elder feels they can't say no. You weren't being generous, Mrs. Patterson. You were being exploited. Even if your children didn't see it that way, that's the reality of what was happening. Her words stung because they were true. I'd let myself be exploited because I was terrified of being alone, of being forgotten, of my children's lives moving forward without me in them. The money had been my insurance policy, my way of staying relevant, but I'd been irrelevant anyway. The money hadn't bought me love or attention, just dependence and resentment when the well ran dry. I started filling my time differently. I joined a book club at the local library. I volunteered at a food bank. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected while pouring all my energy into Jennifer and Michael. And I discovered something surprising. I had a life outside of being someone's mother and ATM. 6 weeks after my birthday, Jennifer called. "Mom, we need to talk." We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Jennifer looked tired, older somehow, stress showing in the lines around her eyes. "Tom lost his job," she said without preamble. "The company downsized. We're going to lose the house if we can't make the mortgage payments. Mom, I know you're angry, but please, we need help." I took a sip of my coffee, buying time to organize my thoughts. What have you done to help yourselves? What? Have you looked for a cheaper place to live? Has Tom found a new job? Have you picked up extra shifts? What steps have you taken that don't involve asking me for money? Jennifer's expression hardened. "I knew you'd be like this. I knew you'd use this to punish us. I'm not punishing you. I'm asking you to be adults. Jennifer, you're almost 50 years old. You can't come running to Mommy every time life gets hard. You used to help us without all these questions. You used to care. I still care. But I also care about not being homeless at 75 because I gave all my money away. Do you understand that's where I was headed? In less than 2 years, I would have had nothing left. Then who would have helped me?" For the first time, I saw something flicker across Jennifer's face. Maybe understanding, maybe guilt. "I didn't realize it was that bad. Because you never asked. You never wondered where the money was coming from. You just took it and assumed I had an endless supply." We talked for another hour. I agreed to pay for a career counselor for Tom and to cover 1 month of their mortgage while they figured things out. But I made it clear. This was the last bailout, the last rescue. After this, they were on their own. "What about Michael?" Jennifer asked. "Are you helping him too?" "Michael hasn't asked for help. Michael hasn't called at all." Jennifer looked away. "He's angry. He says you chose money over family." "No, I chose not to destroy myself financially for children who forgot my birthday. There's a difference. 8 months after my 75th birthday, I was a different person. My savings account had stabilized. I'd learned to say no without drowning in guilt. I'd built a life that didn't revolve around my children's needs and crises. Jennifer and I spoke weekly now, stiff and formal, but civil. Tom had found a new job, and they'd downsized to a smaller house, learning to live within their means. She never apologized for forgetting my birthday, but she also never asked for money again. Michael remained stubbornly silent. I sent him birthday and Christmas cards that went unacknowledged. I called occasionally and got his voicemail. Stephanie had apparently convinced him that I'd abandoned them, that I was selfish and cruel. Maybe I was. Or maybe I'd finally learned that loving your children didn't mean destroying yourself for them. My 76th birthday approached, and I made plans that didn't involve waiting for phone calls or baking myself a sad cake. My book club was throwing me a party at the library. My friend Margaret was taking me to dinner at a nice restaurant. I had plans, a life, joy that didn't depend on whether my children remembered I existed. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to 3 voicemails. The first was from Jennifer. "Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. I'm sorry about last year. We're coming over this afternoon with a cake, if that's okay." The second was from one of my grandchildren, Jennifer's oldest. "Happy birthday, Grandma. Sorry we weren't better about staying in touch. Can I come visit you soon?" The third was from Michael. "Ma, happy birthday. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Can we talk?" I sat on my bed, phone in hand, and cried. Not tears of sadness this time, but something more complicated. Relief mixed with residual hurt, hope tempered by caution. They came that afternoon, Jennifer with her family, Michael with his kids, but not Stephanie, I noticed. They brought cake and presents and awkward apologies. My grandchildren hugged me and called me Grandma instead of sending impersonal texts. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. "Mom, I'm sorry," Jennifer said as we sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd sung Happy Birthday to myself a year ago. "We took you for granted. We treated you like an ATM," I finished. "I know. I want to do better. We all want to do better." Michael nodded. "I was angry because I didn't want to face what we'd been doing to you. It was easier to be mad than to admit we'd been selfish." "You weren't just selfish," I said gently. "You were broke and stressed and overwhelmed, but you were also taking advantage of someone who loved you too much to say no. And I enabled that by never setting boundaries." "So, where do we go from here?" Jennifer asked. I thought about that. "We rebuild. We have a relationship that's not based on money or obligation. You visit because you want to, not because you feel you have to. And I live my life knowing that I'm more than just someone's mother. I'm a whole person with my own needs and desires." "Can you forgive us?" Michael asked. "I'm working on it. Forgiveness takes time, but I'm willing to try if you are." We ate cake and talked, really talked, for the first time in years. It wasn't perfect. There were still uncomfortable silences and unresolved tensions, but it was honest, and honesty was something we'd been missing. My 77th birthday was different. Jennifer and Michael called me a week in advance to plan a family dinner. My grandchildren made me cards, actual handmade cards, not last-minute ones bought at a gas station. And when the day arrived, I was surrounded by family who showed up because they wanted to, not because they needed something from me. The change hadn't been easy. Jennifer and Tom had struggled after downsizing, learning to live within a budget that didn't include their mother's weekly subsidy. Michael and Stephanie had broken up. She'd wanted a lifestyle he couldn't afford without my money, and he'd finally chosen self-respect over her demands. But they'd survived. They'd figured it out, and in figuring it out, they'd become stronger, more independent, more like the adults I'd hoped to raise. I'd changed too. I traveled for the first time in years, taking a bus tour through New England with Margaret and some friends from book club. I took a painting class and discovered I had a talent for watercolors. I dated briefly, a widower from church who was kind, but ultimately not for me. I learned that life after 75 didn't have to be about waiting to die or existing solely for your children's benefit. One Sunday afternoon, Jennifer stopped by unannounced. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd see if you were home," she said. And I knew this was progress, casual visits, not crisis management. We sat on my porch drinking iced tea, watching neighbors walk by. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you regret it? Cutting us off financially? We could have lost everything." I thought carefully before answering. "I regret that it took me so long to do it. And no, you wouldn't have lost everything. You would have had to make hard choices, but you would have survived. And you did survive. You're better for it now." "I don't know about better." "We're definitely poorer," she said with a rueful laugh. "Are you happier?" She considered this. "Actually, yeah. Tom and I fight less now that money isn't constantly stressful. We're on the same team, figuring things out together instead of depending on bailouts from you. And I think I respect him more now, and he respects himself more. Then it was worth it." "What about you? Are you happier?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Middle-aged now, with gray threading through her hair and worry lines earned through living. but also strong, capable, present in a way she hadn't been when she was taking my money and my presence for granted. I'm lonelier sometimes, I admitted, but I'm more whole. I'm not just your mother or Michael's mother or the grandmother who spoils everyone. I'm Dorothy. I have friends and hobbies and a life that belongs to me, so yes, I'm happier. Jennifer reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm glad. And Mom, thank you. For what? For teaching me that love doesn't mean destroying yourself for other people. I think I needed to learn that. I was starting to do the same thing with my kids, giving them everything they wanted instead of teaching them to work for things. You saved me from making your mistake. After she left, I sat on my porch until the sun set, painting the autumn sky in shades of orange and gold. My 75th birthday, the one they'd forgotten, had been the worst day of my life and also the beginning of my salvation. It had forced me to see what I'd become and given me the courage to change it. I still gave money sometimes, Christmas presents for the grandkids, helping Michael with his car insurance when he'd had an unexpected expense, contributing to Jennifer's kids' college funds. But I gave as a gift, not as an obligation. And I kept enough for myself, for my own future, for the woman I'd finally learned I had the right to be. The money I'd given away, that $218,400, was gone forever. I'd never get it back. But in refusing to give more, I'd gained something more valuable. My self-respect, my children's respect, and a life that was mine to live on my own terms. And that was worth more than any amount of money I could have handed over in weekly installments to children who'd forgotten the most basic truth. Their mother was a person who deserved to be loved, not just needed.